Hey everybody, welcome back. Jesse here for 3 Prong Gaming, and today in episode 23 we are going to be adding some custom meshes. Yeah, I've got a little bit to talk about with that. So some custom meshes, and you're going to have the ability to download these meshes for your world. We'll talk about that in a second, but by adding our own custom meshes, we're going to have to do some update with our code, so let's go ahead and get this started. Alright, yeah, like I said, we've got some custom meshes here, and you're going to have the chance to download them. In the previous episode, what did we do in the previous episode? We did our construction times. We got our AI to work on the construction, so that's pretty cool. This one, we're going to make some custom meshes. We're getting to that point. And I'd like to thank, I did not make these custom meshes myself. So a big shout out to one of my subscribers. As a typical American, I am horrible at pronouncing foreign names, so I do not want to insult him by pronouncing his name wrong. I'll flash it up on the screen. So I'm either going to refer to him as Matt, since that's the first 4 letters of his name, or Mr. Rich or Mr. The Rich, because that's what else he calls himself. So he created these meshes, he did some work for us, and he's got some other meshes that he wants to build up for us. And he was gracious enough, I talked to him, and these meshes he's going to allow my subscribers to go ahead and download them and use them in your world. Just so you know, there is a README file in there, so go ahead and check that out. But it just tells you what the license is and gives you a link to the license and gives you a link to his Facebook and website. So check that out. But it is just a Creative Commons, so you could use it however you want. Attribution, you need to give him some attribution if you're going to use it somewhere else. And non-commercial, just to make it fair. He didn't say non-commercial, but I'm throwing the non-commercial in there just because that wouldn't be fair to him, because from what I can gather, he kind of wants to be able to spread his art around for sell. So, but he's going to give these to us for free. So please go ahead, it's down there in the description. It's a Google short link. It just goes to my Dropbox, and just go ahead and click on the short link, and it should download straight from my Dropbox onto your computer. So let's go ahead and get these thrown in here. Pretty simple to do this. I'm sure you know how to import some stuff, but we need to create a couple new folders here. The first one, let's go ahead and call this one Meshes. Right, I have one. Okay. And another folder, let's call this one Textures. Hit enter. All right, let's jump into the meshes. Now the folder, when you download it, it's pretty much going to look like this. Obviously the zip won't be in there, but it's going to look like this. So we've got 3 meshes. Let's see, apartments, burgers, which this will be a restaurant, so we're not going to incorporate this one right away. We'll add it into the game, but we don't have a button for a restaurant yet, but I'm going to throw it in there and you'll have access to that as well. And the work shed, we're going to use this as the construction office. So let's just go ahead and I'll move this back off screen, grab the 3 FBX files, and then just drag it, and once you get the little plus down there, drop it in there. We don't want to import materials. We don't want to import textures. Just leave those blank, and then leave everything else as default. Auto-generate collisions for us, and then import all. There we go. Don't worry about these warnings. Not a big deal. And just to be safe, go ahead and Control S and save all those. So now we need to create some materials for these before we hook them up to anything, just to make it a little bit easier. So let's go into our materials. Actually, let's go into our textures. And again, just grab all the textures. He created a diffuse, a normal, and a specular map for each one of them. So go ahead and grab all 3, and actually it would be all 9, and drop them in here. All right, Control S to save those. Now let's go ahead and jump into our Materials tab. Let's go ahead and right-click, create a new material. We'll call this one M_apartment. And I'll probably end up renaming these. I'll put the M first in all those, but I'm not going to do that on camera. And we'll create another one. Call this M_workshed. And one more M_ burgers. That way we know which one they go to in all of them. Now I'm just going to show you how to do this for one of them. It's going to be the exact same process for all three, but just to save some time on the video, there's no reason for me to show you how all three. So just go ahead and double click one of the materials, open that up. It's kind of handy to have it down here in a minimized window right away. So open up your textures down here, and we are in the apartment. So just control click all three of the apartments, drag it and drop it into here. All right, so now we got those. We can go ahead and maximize that. And like I said, it's pretty simple in here. Just take the diffuse map, which is that one, put it up there, normal down there, and the specular right there. All right, now we need to right click in here and just start typing coordinates, and we want the texture coordinate right there. That's what that's going to do, is that's going to tell these to use the UV map to lay out everything. So just drag the pin into the UV of each one of those texture samples. All right, now take the top pin of our diffuse, put it into the base color, top pin of our specular, put it in the specular, and the top pin of our normal into the normal. Perfect. Go ahead and save it. We don't need to apply it, because once we save it, it'll automatically apply. There's nothing really using it right at this point, so no big deal. All right, so now just go ahead and take a minute and do that for the other three, or the other two. All right, so now that you're done, go ahead and, yeah, we can close out these materials. We don't need them again, at least not for right now. So close those out. So now we need to apply those textures. So let's go ahead and jump back into our meshes tab here and double click the apartment. Come up here to element 0 and select your apartment apartment material. There we go. That's what it's going to look like right there. There's actually one more thing that we're going to need to do with this one and the burgers in the materials. We'll set that in just a second. Go ahead and save that. And then just do the same thing for the other two. Okay, so here is the work shed, and this is the burgers. But as you can see with the same with the apartments, I don't have that open right now, but the apartment's got the same thing. He's got plant meshes up here, but they're low poly. They're pretty much just image planes is all they are, and that's good. That makes it simple. We don't need anything high detailed because most of this is going to be viewed from far away, but we need to be able to take care of that. Well, conveniently for us, in the materials he created, or in the textures he created, jump in here to M apartment, is he created an alpha channel. So what we need to do is, all we need to do from the top one right here, from the diffuse, pull off this pin and do nothing with it right there. We need to come down here and change this blend mode from opaque down to masked. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the right one. No, that's not the right one. Let's change that to translucent. That's going to open up the opacity. So just pull off of the alpha pin of the diffuse, plug that in there, and same thing with the burgers real quick. Let's go ahead and save that. Let's go ahead and close that one. Open up the burgers real quick and do the same thing with that one. Change this down to translucent. Pull off the alpha channel of the diffuse, plug it into opacity, and save that one out. All right, so now let's just double check it worked. Let's open up the burger, and you can see nothing. Okay, I was wrong. Let's jump back into material real quick. Material burger, and we do need to change this to it is masked. Go ahead and select masked, and then just pull the pen and put it into the opacity masked, and then do the same thing with the apartment one. All right, now we got those. Now we should be able to see the plants. There we go. Perfect. Just what we wanted. Yeah, so that's it for those. So now we need to be able to apply them to our buttons, to the buildings we currently have coming in. So let's go ahead and close that, and that. Let's go ahead and come out here to the buildings folder. Open up your commercial, construction office. Now here for the default mesh, just select that and then start to type in workshed, and there it is. Compile it and save it, and go back out here to your residential. Open up the apartment small, and again select that and we will type apartments, and there it is right there. Compile it and save it. Now we still have some work to do on this, but let's go ahead and just close those out. Let's just go ahead and start the game here real quick, and come on, there we go, and drop these in here. Now you can see the buildings he gave us, and I talked to him about it. He made the full-scale buildings for us, and so yeah, these are full-scale to real world. Obviously we're set up for smaller, so we're gonna have to make some adjustments to our zooming and all that. And there's the entry point right there. We can just go ahead and drop a guy in here and let him do that real fast, and there it is. So now we got this, but the collision and everything else is off. So like I said, we're gonna have to set that, but that's what it looks like in real world. And he's real world scale, so if he were to come over here, he'd be about the height. And actually, the mesh, I don't know why Epic did it, but if I'm not mistaken, this mesh, the character, he's actually 277 centimeters tall. And for those of you like me who are metric system deficient, that's over 9 feet tall. So yeah, he's a little big. So not a big deal, because he's obviously not going to be our final one. Let's just go ahead and plop him in there, let him go do the construction on that really fast. Obviously you can see him hanging up right there. We're going to fix that today too. So yeah, that's what those look like in the world. Pretty awesome. So yeah, we're going to scale these down. And just so you know, I've talked about in the past that I was going to make my world about 25% scale. I actually think I'm going to do it at 50%. It gives a little higher detail. Of course, there's more work. When you have higher detail, you got to have better meshes and materials and all that stuff, but not a big deal. I'm going to set mine for 50%, but yeah, he gave us these meshes at full scale, so that way, depending on however big you want to make your world, if you want to do it 25% scale or 50% or 75%, or you want to keep it 100%, then it's there for you, so you've got them. But like I said, I'm going to do 50%, so if you're following along and you want to do it at 50%, then let's just go ahead and set that up. There's actually only 2 places we need to set this scale at. In our camera pawn controller, zoom in here into the begin play, and right here where we spawn our ghost building, it doesn't matter right here. We've got this hooked up to the construction manager, but there's no mesh for this. It doesn't really matter the scale of that because you'll never see it. Instead of doing full scale, let's do 0.5, 0.5, and 0.5. You want to do 25%, then you do 0.25, 0.25, 0.25. Simple as that. Go ahead and compile and save that. And then jump into the ghost building here, into the function we created called get construction struct. And then right here in the make transform, do the same thing. 0.5, 0.5, 0.5. Perfect. Compile, save it, and that should be good for that one. Now they'll come in at 50% of their actual size. So let's just go ahead and test that out. I don't know how easy it'll be to tell the difference, but yeah, there is a difference here. Let's see if we put the guy in here. Yep, you can see how much bigger he is compared to the building. So yeah, we got 50% scale, but since he is bigger, or she, because that's female that we created, then all we need to do is just go back into our camera pawn. Where is it? We're already in it. Camera pawn controller. Come over here to the temporary function we created to spawn the NPC into the world, and right here on the scale, let's go ahead and tune that down. 0.5, 0.5, and 0.5. There we go. Now everyone will spawn in at that particular height. So there we go. See, they're already smaller. You could tell, as opposed to the building. So there we go. Cool. So let's jump back into. We'll come back to that. Let's go into our function library, because what we got to do now is, obviously you could tell that the collision boxes and the entry were not lined up with where the entrances of the building are at. Okay, so one thing you need to remember when you're importing meshes, whether you're making your own mesh or you're downloading a variety of other people's meshes, is consistency. When you export your meshes and for use as an FBX into the Unreal Engine, make sure all your meshes are facing the same way. Epic tells you import them or export them on the positive Z axis, but it doesn't really matter. All these, I've asked Matt to go ahead and rotate these so that they were facing the negative y-axis. Okay, so we need to accommodate for that. So if you have meshes that are, say, facing negative y like these ones, then you import some others that are facing positive x, this code's going to backfire on you. Okay, all this code we're doing in general with the meshes is going to backfire on you because it's assuming the same rotation on each of them, the same axis values. Okay, so here let's do building entrance. So what we got to do on the building entrance is all we have to do is take this x and control drag it into the min y, take this one and put that into the new location y. One thing we need to do though, because the meshes are bigger, is I want to change this value right here, the entrance distance. Let's go ahead and set it to 150, and I'll tell you kind of why I chose that number. It's just kind of a random round number that I chose, but it works perfect for us. All right, so that's all we got to do in the set building entrance. Come over here to the set building collision, and in this one now we got to do a little bit swapping around, and but not that big of a deal. So we just got to take the X here, right? And I'm checking this out. I messed. What did I do here? We need to just switch these around. So go ahead and just, unplug this one and take this X and plug it into the Y. Let's just go ahead and move that down. Move these up and plug that X into that one. So that's pretty much all we had to do for that, is switch those around. But since we're using bigger meshes now, we need to make these sizes a little bit bigger. So let's go ahead and double this one, make that -20, just kind of closing it on the sides a little bit. And then the import box extent here, and this actually needs to go into the X, my bad. That needs to go into the X, and this one needs to go into the Y. Okay, so here it was set at 48, 49, something like that. Let's go ahead and almost double it. We'll make it 98 for the box extent, and we'll go ahead and put 98 in there as well. All right, and that should be it as far as the size and getting the box all laid out to the correct size. So if we play now, there we go. You'll see right away, you'll see the collisions in the right spot, and you'll see our entrance point right there. Same thing with the apartment. Let's go ahead and spawn one of these in. Take a look at that. Collision box is in the same spot, and the entrance sphere is right there. All right, so go ahead and close that out. And next thing we need to do is head back over into the ghost building. Remember, we've got the arrow, right? And so the arrow needs to be changed up a little bit. So what we need to do with the arrows, we need to rotate it on the Z value. Where is it? Rotation right here to 90 degrees. We actually want it on the Y-axis. Let's jump into the viewport, and there we go. We want it on the Y-axis. Oh, wait, that doesn't work. How did we do that? Arrow. Yeah, no, that's right. Just do 90 degrees on the Z-axis right there, and it'll follow. So if we select building mesh or the collision, see it's following the same location as collision. That's what we want. But one thing though with this mesh is the arrow's kind of tucked away inside of the mesh. So let's just drag this arrow and we'll make it a child of the collision. So it's going to stick out a little bit further on the collision. Compile it and save it. So now you'll be able to see what I'm talking about here. Should be able to see the arrow right there. And it's actually in the wrong location. It should be centered to the mesh. For some reason it is not. And the reason why it's not is because we need to go back in here to the event graph since we switched some things around. Right now we have the arrow setting its relative location to the box extent on the X. Well, we just switched it around. So just control drag that to the Y, control drag that one to the Y, and there we go. So now everything should be lined up perfectly. There we go. The arrow's out there a little bit far, but that's not too big of a deal. We rotate it and everything stays where it should be. And we're going to do something pretty nifty with the rotation right there. So yeah, we've got those all hooked up now. Speaking of rotation, let's just go ahead and, like I said, I want to do something nifty with this. So let's just go ahead and create a new function. What I want to do, and let me try to explain it a little bit, is notice how when we spawn the building into the world, it's facing, Well, it's facing the negative y-axis, right? So that's not really what we want. So what I want to do is I want to make it to where when we spawn the building in, not only is it facing the way, no matter wherever your camera's facing into the world, I want it spawned facing the camera. So you see the front of the building, you know, because that's more user-friendly right there. You know, spawning a building like this every single time in the same direction, that's not very user-friendly. It's not very cool. It doesn't look very good. But with that, you run into a couple problems because... or you can run into a couple problems because, well, remember, we have our rotation set to a specific snap. Mine, I have set to 15 degrees. So every time we rotate it, it's rotating 15 degrees. So if our sphere isn't equal to 15 degrees, then we're going to be in between. So it's going to kind of create some weird layouts. So we're going to go ahead and take care of that problem right here. So let's go ahead and create a new function. Go ahead and call this function set initial rotation, okay? And no input on this. We need to grab our reference to our controller reference. We're going to need its reference to the camera pawn, get camera pawn reference. And from the camera pawn, we're going to need a reference to the sphere, get sphere. All right, because that's ultimately, remember, that's what we're rotating is the sphere. So we need to grab the rotation of that. So pull off this now. Go ahead and spell it right. Get rotation. Where is it? Get world rotation. There it is. Get world rotation. That's the one we want right there. All right, go ahead and right click on that, split the struct pin, because all we're going to worry about is the Z, which is the yaw. And then since we have this open right here, back in the camera pawn controller, we have our building rotation rate, right? We have it set to 15 because we're rotating the building at 15 degrees. So that's convenient because if at any point you want to change a rotation, if you got it more than one blueprint, it's really good to have it in a variable because now we can come back if we want to change this at a later date to say, you know, 30 degrees or something, or 45 degrees, then we only have to change this, and anything that has a reference to this variable, which includes our new function we're creating right here, will automatically update. You don't have to go, where did I place that? Where am I using that? Because inevitably you're going to end up missing something, and that's where small bugs come into play. So let's just go ahead and grab building rotation rate. We'll get that and use that. So what we need to do is we need to take this off the yaw, and let's do a less than float. We need to see if it's less than this. So remember, I'm just going to say 15 because that's what it's set at right now. So if our yaw value is less than 15 and our yaw value is greater than, pull this off and do multiply integer by float. That is fine. Slide these out a little bit. By -1. And the reason why we're doing this is because remember, in 360 degrees, it actually only gives you 180 in positive and negative. So if we're less than 15 or greater than -15, then we need to control that because we don't want to pass those values, because you'll see in a minute. Let's just go ahead and select off of here and do an and. So this means it's in between. It's not exactly 15. It's in between 15 and -15. All right, so go ahead and drop in a branch. I'll explain this again as we finish it, just so you understand, because I'm sure I'm probably confusing you a little bit with that. Go ahead and plug the and into here. All right, so now if that's true, or excuse me, if that's false, if it's not within these parameters right here that we set, what we need to do is we need to pull off of the yaw again and type in round. All right, now in the past we've used floor, but floor automatically rounds down, and ceil, C-E-I-L, will round up. This one we want to round, this will round to the nearest integer. I believe a value of 5 will round up to the next whole number. So we need to take this value now, and it returns an integer, but we need a float. So go to float, plug that into there like that. All right, so now we need, we've used this one in the past, type div and grab the division, whole, and remainder. Okay, so now we take this value right here, and it is the dividend. Right, now what we need to divide it by is our building rotation rate. So just go ahead, and I'll pretty all this up in a little while off camera. As I say that, I put in a reroute node. But yeah, so what we want to do is we want to take the rotation, as long as it's not between -15 and 15, we want to take our rotation of our sphere, right? We want to round it to the nearest whole number, and then we plug that in and divide it by our rotation rate. Okay, so what this is going to do is this is going to ensure that we're always returning and rotating in the value of 15 degrees. Okay, we're not going to worry about the remainder. That's the whole point of using this division, whole, and remainder, is because all we want is this right here. So now pull off of this and multiply it. Integer times integer. Yeah, that's fine. So what we need to do with this now is take off of this pin again and plug it in right there. So we could probably, instead of truncating, let's go like this. Let's go pull off of this and do multiply integer times float. That way we don't have to truncate. Just take this, plug that in right there, and it's going to return a float for us, which is perfect because that's what we need. So go ahead and grab, do we have return value? We don't. Go ahead and type in a return node. Right, on the return node, we're going to need to return a float. So we'll call this return rotation. Right, and then just drag, it needs to be a type float, and then just drag this value right into there. Right, and plug in the false to that. So ultimately, that's all the execution we have is the branch. The rest is all math. So up here, if it is between -15 and 15, type in a return node. And what we need to return is just zoom in here, click in the box, and return 0. Because if it's inside there, we don't want to divide because it's going to get ugly. And really, we don't even have to do that. We could use this because if it's inside 15, well, a whole number is going to be 0. The only problem with this, if you do that, only check, you'll still have to run a branch in here, but just run off of this and make sure it is not equal to 0. All right, because 0, you can't divide by 0. Yeah, because if this is 0 in the dividend, you'll get an error. You cannot divide by 0. It is mathematically improbable. Okay, so I just do this. Like I said, you could pull off there, do an equal 0, make sure not equal to 0, and run it that way. And that is it for this. So compile and save it. So I think we need to go back in here into the event graph. Now we need to implement this function here, and we'll do it at the end of onSpawn. Okay, so drag your set initial rotation, plug it in here, and hook up the execution. We probably could make this a pure function if we wanted to. I'm just going to leave it as an execution. Even though I like pure functions, we'll just leave it as an execution. Now, with the buildings, the way they're laid out, right, is they're actually 90 degrees off. All right, so we're going to take this initial rotation and pull it out and do a plus float, and we need to add 90 to it, right? Because that's going to give us, like I said, it's 90 degrees off of, because it's negative z, facing the negative y-axis. So in order to rotate the mesh to the positive x-axis, or make it appear as though it's, facing positive x, it would be adding 90 degrees. You can go into each of your meshes if you want and do add 90 degrees to the rotation, base rotation. But this is fine for me. That's all I'm going to do. So go ahead and pull off and do a set actor rotation right there. And this is, the target is itself. We're in the ghost building, so we want to add the target rotation right there. Go ahead and split this struct, and then all we're going to do is we're going to plug this right into the Z. And that should be it. Compile it and save it. We're over 30 minutes already. We don't have too much further to go though. So now We go like this. I move the camera off. We're not perfectly there, but see, it doesn't snap perfectly to where we're at. Let me show you a new test here. Play. I know this right here, the way we're facing is 180 degrees. I know it because I tested and ran some print screens. So if we place this down, this is perfectly in front of the camera at 180 degrees, right? So we go like this, and we'll just random location. I have no idea what angle we're facing at right here. We spawn this in, and if we were to rotate this now to make sure it's compatible with our 15-degree increment, there we go. See how they match up? Perfect. So we come back over here, we'll do off kilter again, do another construction office, rotate it back the other way, so now it should line all back up perfectly. See, perfectly straight. So that's what that math does for us, is it allows us to be able to keep this perfectly in line with in 15-degree increments or whatever your rotation rate is. So now all you have to do is go back and change your rotation rate once to something divisible by 5. It's got to be evenly divisible into 360. We discussed that in the video where we created our rotation rate. So now 0 between negative 15 and 15 would be this angle right here. So it's just returning a 0 for us. So now it is perfectly set opposite. And you can tell here because we still have everything resetting back to default. See, that's perfect 90 degrees right there. So that's how to tell right there for now. So that is it for that. One last thing I want to do really fast is go back into the camera controller now, because I've changed my world to be bigger, 50% instead of 25%. I want to go ahead and change this. So if you're following along, that's one reason why I'm doing this. If you're following along, what we need to do is we need to change our max arm distance. Right now it's set to 2,500, and let's go ahead and set the max to 4,000. All right, so that's going to change that right there. The minimum on these float, we're in the zoom in and out. We're going to change the minimum value to 1,000, so we don't want to get any closer than 1,000 units. And I may come back and change these. These are just some initial values, so that way we don't get so close to the building. Okay, and then we need to come back in the player controller still. We're going to go into the camera pawn really fast. We're going to change this, but go ahead and change the when we reset our target arm length right here in the zoom reset. Let's go ahead and put 2,500 because that's the value I'm going to make right now. So jump in real quick into the blueprint, the camera pawn, select the spring arm and set its default, where is it? Right here. Target arm length, set it to 2,500. Perfect. So compile it, save it, and that is it. Right? So now you can see we're further away than we were. Drop the apartment in here. Go like that. So yeah, now we can still get pretty close. Like I said, I'll probably end up changing this. I don't know if I want to necessarily get that close. We'll have to see. Drop him in there. Let him go do the construction real fast. Drop in a construction. See how it's rotated off to the side like that. But bam, one rotation like that, and it is all set. So you got that. Let's get this in here. And let me drop in, I'm going to drop in the burger just so you can see what it looks like. So yeah, that is it for that. Real quick, like I said, let me drop in just like this because we did the burger and I want to showcase it because he made it for us. And this is going to be full scale because, well, oh no, there is one other thing. Ooh, navigation mesh just built. So let's drop this in real quick, take a look at it. So yeah, it's going to do that because, well, it's just a mesh. We don't have any collision, or we can't disable the collisions on that. But that's what the burger looks like. Pretty awesome. I like what he did. Got the hamburger joint up there. So looks really awesome. Thank you, Matt, Mr. The Rich. I really do appreciate it. There is one last thing, right? So, man, we're 35 minutes or so into this. I'm sorry. I know everybody's been asking me, why are you worried about 30 minutes? So hopefully you stick around with me because we need to take care of rebuilding our nav mesh, right? So let's go ahead, because you saw earlier that I'm not going to demonstrate because we're low on time, is you saw the pawn. I've already had a couple people mention to me about it, how their pawns are getting stuck on the building. It's because when we place, actually I will demonstrate here just real quick just to show you. If you push the tilde key, it opens up the console commands. Type in show space nav and then up arrow. You can't use your cursor to select it, but show navigation. and it's going to highlight everything green for us. Now, this green is where your AI can walk. So you can't walk here. That's how you view it in game. Normally, if you're in the editor, you press P. So what it should be doing is when we place a mesh, we place it, it should be rebuilding. See how it doesn't have any, it's green all the way around it. So when the AI runs, it doesn't notice the mesh is there, because even though there's a collision, the collision stops him from running through it, but it doesn't let him know that he can't walk that way. It's got to have a clear path around it in order to know. So that's what we need to fix real quick. So go ahead and select your settings, go to your project settings, go down to your navigation mesh, and mine was set by default. Oh, no, it's not. See down here, runtime generation. We need to change this from static to dynamic. Force rebuild on load. It doesn't really matter if you have it checked or not. By default, navigation will skip the first update after being successfully loaded. I'm just going to leave it on. Not a huge deal. So go ahead and close your project settings. And that's still not going to do it. It should. There's a bug in the system. And I've let Epic know about it. More importantly, let's go ahead and do tilde key. Push up arrow. Just once you select it, it'll pick your last ones. Show navigation. That's still not going to work. See how it's not doing it? It's supposed to. It's supposed to dynamically update. But there's a bug, and Epic's not really in a huge hurry to fix the bug. Control S. Let me save this real quick. Yeah, ignore that. So there's a workaround for it. Very simple workaround. What we need to do is go into our buildings, grab your building master, and in here in the viewport, all we need to do is notice how the mesh is empty, right? We don't want to set the display mesh. We want to set the actual mesh of the building master. It's blank, even though we're populating it but we're doing it in the construction script in all the buildings. So in the construction script right here, we're setting the static mesh. But even though that's supposed to work, it's not. Simple workaround though. Just come over here to the static mesh. Instead of none, let's select sphere. Just something really simple. We could probably even do something with less. You could probably make your own plane with no mesh value, anything. It just needs to be something. It's got to have a mesh in your static mesh up here, not your display mesh in your static mesh. Compile it, save it. Now that will populate to all its children. So this will be the default mesh. We'll never see this because construction script is ran before you ever see the mesh in the world. So this will automatically go away as soon as the construction script runs, but it needs to know it has a mesh. So go ahead and let's go ahead and run this now. And just to show you, push the tilde key, up arrow, show navigation. So now we place the apartment, select it, and it still didn't rebuild. Why didn't it rebuild? It's supposed to rebuild. Let's check one last thing. Recast nav mesh. That's set to dynamic. All right. Sorry about that. I had to run away. You probably noticed that I cut away. It will rebuild. I did do that right. The only problem is that's on the building mesh. Well, when we drop a building, it's not the building mesh that we're dropping. It's the construction proxy. So go back into your blueprints, construction, grab the construction proxy. Now we need to come in here to the static mesh and we need to do the exact same thing. Do sphere, select the material sphere, compile it, save it, play it. And this is my longest video to date, but yeah, pretty cool all the same. So go ahead and do show nav again, show navigation, up, enter. So now we come in here, we click construction, we drop it, and now it rebuilt it. Awesome, perfect. That's what we needed to do. So yeah, now your AI will completely run around those buildings. So I'm not going to demonstrate that because we're low on time, but yeah, so that's exactly what's going to happen though. You can see that right there. And that is why we set the sphere out as far as we did, is because if the sphere was in here for the entrance, if it was inside this brown area, and we may end up wanting to make it bigger, but if it was inside the brown area right here with no nav mesh, he would never be able to get to it. But it's right on the edge right there. He can get into it just fine. Let's speed this up so we can get that. and then boom, he's going to run. See, it rebuilt because we put that on the building master. So it rebuilt after it placed. Same thing right there. So see where he's standing right now? That's where the entrance point is at. So it's on the outside right there. So that's why we did that. Cool. Oh, one last thing I want to do real quick. Might as well do it because I'll forget if I don't. The sight distance, let's raise that up because we're using a bigger world. So let's just go ahead and do, I don't know, I'll just enter 2000. Like I said, you can do it whatever you want. I'm going to try to figure something out with this to make it more intuitive so it doesn't just stop at the edge of the screen. Zoom sensitivity, because we're so far out now, I'm going to set this to 150, right? So that way we can zoom in and out faster. It doesn't take forever for us to get in and out, see? So now we can zoom in much faster. Cool. Awesome. I think we're way beyond time. So hopefully you guys stuck with me. You got all the way through it. If you did, please do me a favor. If you found this useful, hit that like button. I really do appreciate it. Leave me some comments. You guys have been great with the comments and the feedback, and I've been doing all I can to try to help all you guys out. And so far, I think I've done pretty good to this point. So hit that like button. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. And check out one of the other videos that are playing on the screen right now. Until next time. Peace.